Cities are defined by their cultures. Those cultures could entail sports or business or certainly arts and entertainment. Oklahoma City is thriving in all of these areas, but who makes that all happen? This Town OKC explores the people behind the cultures, their origins, their motivations, their challenges, and their dreams. I'm Rick Allen Lippert. I've been in this town for over 50 years with a front row seat to seeing the culture grow from a dusty bus stop on the Southern Plains to a flourishing destination. Join me as we meet the folks behind the culture on This Town OKC. Galen Culver, what a thrill it is to have you sit in the rehearsal studio here at Carpenter Square Theater with me. I have to say that This Town OKC is sponsored by Carpenter Square Theater, where we produce 8 productions a season, 10 performances of each show, running over 3 weekends, free parking, dedicated free parking across the street. You can find out everything you need to know at carpentersquare.com. Okay, now we're into the show. This is an oral history podcast.
Okay.
So my first question to everyone is, where are you from?
I was born in Salem, Oregon.
Wow.
1963.
Salem.
My dad was a high school orchestra teacher.
Oh, how fun.
He had ambitions to be a professor, I think. And so he went to, he applied and was accepted to the Eastman School of Music in New York.
Wow, nice.
Moved there when I was a toddler. And then he got a job with the Detroit Symphony. And I lived in Detroit when I was a little kid, very little. Got a job at Ohio State University.
He did?
Yeah, he did.
Okay.
And
the Ohio State University.
okay, sorry, yeah, the Ohio State, the Buckeyes.
I have a cousin who's an alum, and he never lets me forget that.
Yeah, there's an Ohio University, but it's a private university.
Right.
So
Right.
okay, so he worked there. My folks split up in the turbulent '60s, early '70s,
Right.
And my mom was from Washington State, so we moved in the mid '70s to Washington State, and that's where I kind of stuck there until I.
So you're about 10 years old or so at this point?
Yeah, when I was about 10, we moved to Washington State, and then we moved around within the state several times, but I eventually went to Washington State University, and then I went, whoever hires me first, I'm going to go there. Whoever offers me a paycheck is going to get me, and that's where,
I understand.
Yeah.
Before we get any further into college, tell me about your high school years.
It was an interesting spot in Washington State. The Bellevue School District at the time never ever lost any request that they had for money in an election. And it got so bad, they were so overfunded compared to the rest of the state that they actually passed a law to cap certain school districts so that they wouldn't get so far ahead of the rest of the rest.
Oh,
and so they did that
because Bellevue had so much more resources.
They had, it was the fashionable east side of Seattle, and people there, it was the birthplace of Microsoft and enormous, huge engines of commerce now.
Yeah.
But in the late '70s, early '80s, it was just a fast growing community, and they valued education, and they poured as much. If you were an educator there, or you were an administrator, and you happened to ask for anything, they would say absolutely. So the list of electives for my high school was crazy.
Yeah.
And so they had a high school teacher who taught radio and TV, and we did production. We had a little high school program. I had another friend and I, we used to make Super 8 movies and early video movies and early, actually reel-to-reel videotape editing. And we just kind of messed
pretty
around.
Primitive stuff there.
Yeah. It was. I can't even explain how we did it now, but we did have reel-to-reel videotape machines that could kind of do primitive editing.
Was it electronic editing, or were you splicing?
No, it was electronic.
Yeah.
But I can't remember if we had 2 machines that went to one, or if we just had one machine, a play machine and then a record machine. I can't remember.
Yeah.
It was in some back room. And then, I was part of the the audio visual club, so
Right.
if someone needed a VCR machine and, in the portable out back, you're the guy who wheels it down there and gets out of class.
Been there, done that.
In your day, it was the projector.
It was. Many 16.
Can you please thread this up?
Yeah. Oh, I loved it. I loved being the AV boy.
Well, I was an assistant projectionist at a movie theater in downtown Seattle for a couple of summers.
Nice.
And so I got to thread up the big 35 millimeters, change reels, and do all that stuff. That was great fun.
So what else did you do for fun in high school?
I was ski instructor, just a kind of an outside kid. We loved to go to the ocean and just goof off. But I traveled back and forth to see my dad in the summers, and then as soon as I could, I was working. I knew I wanted to go to college, and nobody had any money to give me, so I knew I was going to have to work for it.
So what kind of jobs?
Painted crosswalks. Worked at Jack in the Box, and worked in a movie theater for a couple summers. Yeah, and I kind of barely got me through, and I finished early. Luckily I had enough, AP stuff from a good school district, and then a nice, nice extra credits, taking a few extra classes. So in 3.5 years, I was done. I had a meeting with my advisor who surprised me with the news that I had enough credits to graduate.
Wow.
And so I went immediately to my apartment, packed up and left, went straight home and started typing up resumes and sending them out en masse every single day until I got something.
Okay. And so now this was 3.5 years of high school or college? Okay, so this was, what did you say,
Washington State.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the audio visual teacher, the radio TV teacher at my high school had gone to Washington State, and Washington State said, well, Edward R. Murrow went there, Keith Jackson went there. They have a strong, number of pretty good people who'd gone there to school, and so, that's, I thought, okay, I only applied to one school, and it was the state college, so their admission requirements weren't great, and they were happy to have me. So
and the cost was still reasonable back then.
Yeah, I think $5,000 a year. They said that's all you need. It'll cover everything. Yeah, $5,000, and so I went, okay, I have to get some student loans, but I think I can swing that.
So you majored in what, radio, TV, film?
Yeah, radio, TV, communications. Just a straight communications degree.
Yeah. And did you, I assume you worked while in school?
No, just the summers. I mean, well, unless it was a TA job. Yeah. If it was in the field. Right. I tried. And then every time a network came to town to shoot a football game or a basketball game, I was kind of right up the first of the line, saying, can I pull cable? Can I do this? Sure. And that got you into the really good buffets, the network camera guy buffets. I'd feast there. And then they'd pay me in cash at the end of the day based on how, however many hours I worked. And so that was always good pocket money. And Washington State was a little bit remote, but teams were good enough. Usually at least one network regional team would come in per year, and that was enough to, keep me in beer money.
I assume you also made some nice contacts doing that. Did that help at all?
Yeah, I got to meet a couple of announcers and whatnot, but and talked to a few people, and I knew I kind of wanted to be at that time on the talent side. I thought I wanted to be a sports guy, a sports announcer. Yeah,
that was my first goal in broadcasting.
I had a little radio show on the independent station, Mr. Sports, on a Sunday night, and I had a weekly show, and I'd do sports radio, and I had a kind of an affected voice, but I would do gag stuff, and then I would always go to the press conference that the football coach had in the locker room. Or in those days, it was real easy, and nothing too formal, and so it was pretty easy. And I got a press pass, so I could roam the press row, get free hot dogs, and then go down to the locker room and be interviewing the coach and interview all the track coaches, whatever coaches I needed. I could usually just walk around and they'd make themselves available. So it was nice. Yeah, it was a good training ground. I just realized after a while that wasn't quite what I wanted to do.
And this is while you're still in school, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So anything else about college? Because I want to get to your first job.
Yeah, it was a great experience. I mean, Washington State, like a lot of land grant schools, is in a remote location.
Mm-hmm.
And Washington State is especially that way. It's 2.5 hours south of Spokane and right on the Idaho border, and there's just nothing else around. And so it's just the college sits there and is kind of a really nice place to really concentrate on what you're doing, and there's no people not really very many people leaving for the weekend like you get at an OU or a place where the college sits in a major metropolitan area, and it empties out over the weekend. At Washington State, most people stayed because it's 6 hours back to Seattle. And, it's a long ways.
So who was the first employer to hire you?
KFSM TV in Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Okay.
I had done an internship at a very small TV station in Montana, Missoula, Montana. I lived with my uncle for the summer, and they let me do everything. They just treated me like a regular employee, except I never got paid.
Right.
But my first official paycheck came from the CBS affiliate in Fort Smith, Arkansas.
Did that seem like the end of the world coming from
I'd look on a map
Washington?
to see where it was.
Sure.
Yeah, and just kind of go, okay, Fort Smith, right. And then across the state line, there's something called the Washita National Forest. I'm kind of going, okay. And then someone mentioned, no, I think it's Washita. Okay, I got to remember that.
Yeah.
I can't remember I never visited that part of the state, and I can't remember ever having visited, maybe cutting through Oklahoma on a family trip somewhere. But, it was always from Ohio or Michigan or something if I was coming across. So mainly I was on I-90. I didn't come, I was a complete neophyte when it came to this area.
Yeah. How long were you there?
4 years.
Okay.
Which is 3 times as long as anybody else. I mean, most people would go to a TV station like that where they had one staff photographer, and the average amount of time there was about a year and a half, and then you're wanting to get going to somewhere else, a bigger TV station in those days. Sure. That's what you did.
Right. Everyone was moving up to a bigger market.
Yep.
So were you the staff photographer for all 4 years?
No, I came in as a reporter, and they just handed me a camera, and said, okay, here you go. You've shot, right? And I had some videography experience, and so away I went. And luckily for me, there were a group of us who were that way. The staff photographer was an older guy, and he tended to work with females who couldn't physically carry 3/4-inch camera gear and big cameras.
Yeah.
Some of the old ones were TK90s, which were in those, they were like 50 pounds by themselves.
Yeah.
And then you have a deck.
Right.
Carrying your 3/4 stuff, and then microphones and whatever, and a tripod that was not, it was a production tripod. I mean, it was just huge. And so
just to kind of put it in context, carrying a camera and the quote portable 3/4-inch deck and the battery belt that you had,
the Frezzi belt
that ran the camera, which was like a scuba diving weight belt, and the tripod. I mean, you're hauling easily 100 pounds.
Well, I'll tell you about a young lady we hired just after I got there, and they decided, well, let's see if she can carry this stuff. So they put the light belt on her. They put a deck on, gave her the camera. She fell over before they could give her everything. She just fell down. She couldn't physically lift all that stuff. And they kind of went, okay, you're going to be the morning anchor. We're going to send you out, but you're not going to be the outlying counties reporter like I was.
Yeah.
You're going to Yell County, or you're going down to Waldron, or up to, Rogers or something like that. That's where they put me. And then a couple of years later, they sent me to the Oklahoma side, Adair County, Sequoia County, McCurtain County, and you're just by yourself. So, we'll come back with a story and we'll talk, but otherwise you're on your own. So that's kind of how it worked for me.
I was a news photog at KZTV in Corpus Christi, CBS affiliate for not that long before it was promoted. But I remember, the female reporter would typically carry the tripod. And so this one reporter, I handed her the tripod. She says, "What's this?" I said, "Well, the reporter carries the tripod.
Please help me." Yeah.
Because I have, the camera and this and the battery belt and everything. And she says, "I can't carry this in these heels." And I said, "Well, then you need to wear better shoes."
Right.
Carry the damn tripod.
Yeah. Here. Well, yeah. So there were several of us, young, eager to learn, guy reporters who kind of geeked out on photography.
Yeah.
And luckily there was a guy there who was the weatherman, who was still one of the best photographers I ever knew. Yeah. He did a thing called From the Front Porch, which was a feature program, and it was fantastic. It was so good. And he kind of taught us about sequencing, a sequence of action, and wide, medium, tight, and things. I would just go out and shoot stuff and shoot an interview and not really know what I was doing. But he kind of started breaking it down, and I went, "Oh, okay, all right, I can, start working with the building blocks of a story." And then, just by doing it every day, and then writing every day and working the craft every day, I got pretty good. And then I wanted to try producing. I was the 10 o'clock producer for a while. Okay. And people would leave all the time, so I would jump in and do the morning assignments, be the assignment manager, and be this guy. And so over time, I did everything there was to do there. And then a guy named Kevin Ogle came to be our main anchor, and I was shooting some of his stories. And he said, "You're good enough to get out of here. Why don't you get out of here?" I said, "Well, I'm dating this girl, And he said, "No, you could, why don't I know this guy in Oklahoma City. I'm going to call him up. You send him a tape." And I'm like, "Well, okay, all right." Because I'd been I'd wanted to leave and be a reporter. I think I could have gone to Tulsa pretty easy, or maybe to Oklahoma City as a reporter. But I made the jump as a photographer instead.
Let's put some dates on this. When did you get to Fort Smith?
Spring of 1985.
Okay.
And I stayed until the spring of 1989.
Okay.
So I'm an 89er to Oklahoma. A 1989er. And
so then you went to Channel 4.
Yeah.
What was
KTVY?
It was KTVY at that time.
In 1989, it was KTVY, and I was a photographer. I was hired as a staff photographer with a toolbox that was a little bigger than anybody really knew. I could write, and I could be on camera too. Sure. And the photography staff knew that, but nobody else did. So I distinguished myself pretty fast. Usually you send a photographer out to an accident scene or to a press conference, they're going to bring back the video and just dump it on somebody else's desk to write. Mm-hmm. So they've got to tromp over to somewhere they can watch the video, and then they write up the story. Well, I saved them a step. I'd been doing it for 4 years. Sure. I'd just come back and say, "Why don't I write up something for you?" And it just floored them. And they delighted the producers and delighted everyone else. Sure. Like, he can write this story. Can you, that's unheard of for a photographer to do that. And so I right away, and then anchor people, if you get to know them a little bit, especially when the weather's not perfect, they don't like to leave the building, because then it's all they got to refix up, mm-hmm. and so when you're going on the air, and I understand it, you're already prettied up, and if you leave the building and the wind blows, that's 15 minutes you got to spend in the bathroom again to get your hair perfect. Yes. And they don't, and it ends up being that they don't want to leave. And so a weekend anchor there was a story they needed to cover. I'd just say, "Well, I'll just go and do it." And when I'd come back, I say, "Why don't I just write this up for you? Let me just write this up. You see what it like, and then you go voice it, and it'll be your story. But I've already got the thing kind of edited in my head." Mm-hmm. And they'd go, sure." So you would write it and edit it. Yeah. So I would write, and then their voice would be on it. But that worked for a couple of years. And then Desert Storm came along, and the AWACS at Tinker, the AWACS program, offered one seat to go to Saudi Arabia to each of the affiliates.
Wow.
One.
I remember that now.
Yeah. So I went, of course,
Yeah.
because I was well-rounded, and then the other two stations sent reporters, and I ended up being sort of the pool camera for them.
Right.
But I did a lot more. I shot a lot more that I kept for myself, and came back and did a nice series, 6, 7, 8-part series on what it was like over there. And it won first place for general reporting for the AP awards that year.
Nice.
So it was interesting that a photographer won that award. And so they went, oh, okay. All right, let's have, maybe we could, carve, do something where Galen could become more than just what he is. He's a great photographer, and I'd been to the NPPA workshop, and but I was already 2 years in. I was thinking, okay, I'm going to jump now as a photographer to Nashville. They were a station in Nashville was talking to me, and
Okay.
and I was getting a little closer to being married at the time, and I thought, yeah, we can go somewhere and make a little more money, or maybe I can work my way west again, whatever.
Yeah.
So
Bigger market, just someplace a bigger market.
well,
Nashville wasn't necessarily larger at that time, were they?
it was a little bigger, and they had a station there
Okay.
called WSMV that was really, really good.
Okay.
I mean, I was starting to look at where can I be a really good photographer?
Yeah.
Where can I up
Yeah.
my, where's the next step? Denver, Dallas.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
Nashville, just because of that station.
Okay.
And so I was sending out tapes and kind of calling photographers and working relationships. But our GM at the time decided that he wanted a feature. It would be nice if we had
GM meaning general manager.
general manager of the TV station decided, I want a feature reporter. We need to have one of those. And Dino Lally was his first choice.
Yeah.
And I ended up shooting a bunch of his stories.
Okay.
And then he would write them, and they were okay.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a very affable person.
Sure.
Nice. He didn't want to do it. I just didn't. His heart wasn't in that
Okay.
at the time. And I think it was, I've heard later that it was the assistant news director, Mark Robertson Baker, who said, what about Galen? He's shooting all these stories anyway. He's been he's proven himself as a reporter. So why not just let him have this, let him give it a try. So in July of 1991, that's 35 years ago this month,
Wow.
the news director, Jerry Gumbert, came to me and said, hey, we got an idea. What do you think? And I remember thinking, what? So you're gonna let me go out by myself, do whatever stories I want. I won't have a schedule anymore. I don't have to cover spot news or any of these things that just burn out regular news people. And I can and just come back and produce 3 stories a week. Well, eventually we want you to do 4, I said. Or he said.
Yeah.
We'll want 4 pretty soon. And I went, well, you're going to kill me with 4, but I'll do 3 to start, and we'll go from there. We'll see how it goes. So in January, they gave me a 2-week head start, and I went out, and suddenly I was free of the assignment desk of, hey, we need you, the jerk you around. We've got to run you on this and run you on this, and the harsh deadlines and all that melted away, and all of what's good about covering television news was left on my plate. and I thought, man, this could be really, really good.
And who came up with the title?
I've learned recently that it was just a joke. Somebody just said, it sort of, they were kind of parsing out names. My vote was Culver's Travels.
Yeah.
Kind of the Gulliver's Travels kind of thing. So, but I wasn't in the meeting, and they weren't. I guess I wasn't invited, but it was a news department head meeting or something, and one of the producers just blurted out, "Is this a great state or what?" Kind of in frustration.
Yeah.
And everyone went, "That's it. That's gonna be that's the one." And when the news director came and talked to me about, here's, we're going to do this, here's what it's going to be, and I know your girlfriend lives in Little Rock, and so you can, if you finish up 2-3 days, shooting 3 stories. Just hit the road, go see her. I went, okay,
Yeah.
thanks, sir. But he said, and we're going to call it, is this a great state or what? I went, oh, okay, all right. And he said, you're going to say it at the end of every story. And I went, I don't think so. I'm not doing that. And he said, well, okay, we'll find somebody else. He goes, okay, I'll say it.
Right.
Yeah, okay, sure. And so, that's how it started. And so Monday, Wednesday, Friday, starting in July 24th was the first one that aired, July 24th, 1991. And 35 years later, I'm sitting here still doing the same thing. And yeah, it's been an unbelievable run.
And as we record this in July of 26, we're not quite at the official 35th anniversary, but pretty darn close.
Yeah.
35 years. I would have lost that bet.
I would have too. I would have lost that bet because we've gone through 3 or 4 ownership changes.
Yes.
We've gone through multiple management changes. And I always, now I really active, that's one of my goals. But in the early days, I thought, okay, if I can be really low on a list of problems that a news director or a manager has to deal with on a daily basis, then I can be free to basically do what I want.
Yeah,
and
very smart.
That's been my goal, and it's really worked out. I really quickly, I stopped telling them where I was going. They just assumed that I was going to have a story, so they don't know where I am at any particular time. And in those days, in the early days before we had laptops, I'd have to go back to the station to edit, so I would check in. But now I really don't. I do, just to make sure they know who I am and to be collegial with my coworkers. But I really don't have to go into the station at all anymore.
Right.
You
keep the gear with you.
Gear,
you can
car,
edit anywhere you are, as long as you have
like the other day, I edited a story in the Mangum Public Library and sent it in the other day, and I've done that. If I have, I schedule something, but then I have the whole day to, either I'll shoot something else or I'll go, well, I need to go edit, and so I'll bring my headphones and my laptop in and sit down at a little work table, and away I go.
So first off, I have to say I apologize for not mentioning is this a great state or what at the beginning of this to let people know who you are. But I think they, if they hear your name, they know that. And then secondly, I really don't recall when we first met. Our paths crossed sometime.
At O-Trip?
A couple decades ago. I don't know.
Yeah. I remember taking a digital editing class at O-Trip in 1998. When the first Avid machines were coming out. And it was a different guy, but you were around there at the time.
Yeah.
And I thought, okay, I really want to know how to learn this Avid, because before very long it's going to take the place of everything.
That would have been in the then brand new film program.
Yeah.
Because they've used Avid from the beginning. I never did.
Yeah. So they had a bank of Avid machine, Avid software stuff, and we got to shoot and input video and do the whole thing. And then our station, right in about that time, got one Avid edit suite. And a couple of people knew how to use it or trained themselves how to use it. And they frankly weren't anxious to teach anyone else. Right. They just, it was sort of, they were taking time away, and they didn't want somebody else learning that valuable skill. Right. So, but I had that, and then it wasn't very long later, we just went all digital. Yeah. Or we dumped in and then dumped back out to tape to run it on the air. Yeah. But we were mainly editing digital stuff. And for the listeners who are not part of the business, Avid was the company that really pioneered what we have now called editing, but back in the day it was called nonlinear editing. Yeah. Because you didn't have to edit from tape to tape. You could do it within the computer and just move clips around and put them in whatever sequence you wanted. Revolutionized the industry. Yeah. And those first Avids, and I imagine they still are, very expensive. Yeah. Just getting one was a big expenditure. Yeah.
pushing $100,000 back then.
Uh-huh. And the door locked to that edit suite. And
Yeah.
you had to sign up for it. And yeah. And
Yeah.
So
Even
it
the
was-
hard drives were proprietary.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I had an avid salesman one time tell me he was offering, making me a great deal, and this would have been 95, 96,
Mm-hmm.
an 8 gig hard drive
All right.
for $11,000. Deal of the century, an Avid 8 gig hard drive for 11 grand. I passed on it.
Yeah. Man.
I mean, they were very proprietary, and then the whole industry changed with
Right.
with other
Changed pretty fast.
other applications.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Avid still has a strong hold on feature film stuff.
Well, I when they said, okay, is this a great state or what? I just immediately thought, okay, well, then only the contiguous borders of Oklahoma are going to stop me from going to wherever I want to go.
Yeah.
And so I've held true to that and have told stories from all over the place and just had a great time.
So I know you get this question everywhere you go, but for the folks who want to know, where do you find those stories?
People call or email in sometimes.
Okay.
When I'm out, I'll find stuff. Used to be, I would pore over every small town newspaper the state had.
Okay.
That's not. I don't have ink stained fingers anymore. I can still go online and see. A lot of them are behind a paywall now, but you can still, and there's enough of them there to get a general idea. Okay, there's a good feature story. There's a good one. I follow a couple other, publications, but yeah, a lot of times people just call me, or I'll be out somewhere, and they say, "Have you ever done a story on this? Or have you ever done this?" And sometimes a lot of times I'll say yes. I say, "Yeah, I've done that. I did it a few years ago. Sorry you missed it, but
Yeah.
I did do that story." But sometimes, I'll go, "Oh, really? Okay, yes. I'd like to meet that guy." Just like we were in your lobby a little while ago.
Yeah.
The story ideas come filtering in through, and then they get through my filter. And if I haven't done it already, and I'm loath to go back sometimes and do the same story. I don't want to do that. I have to find it either a good follow up or a new angle or something. So. Yeah, just talking to people and enough story ideas come in that I can't possibly do all of them, and that's the way I like it.
And the reference you made before we started recording, I was showing you around the Carpenter Square Theater, and in our lobby we have an art exhibit with every production, and coincidentally, Assorted Lives opens tonight, and the artist on display is a fabric artist, tie-dyed fabric artist named Trevor Peterson. And when I mentioned him to you, you wanted his contact info.
Right up. Hey, I need to call that guy.
It's very visual. And he's shown me some videos of him working with the stuff, and it's wonderful. So I want to, you have a very unique style of reporting, covering these stories that you do, with the people doing interesting things. You have multiple cameras at work. I think you're even using an iPhone.
It's just another little camera with a wide-eye lens.
Okay.
But yeah.
So how did that develop? That's what I really want to know.
Well, for a long time I just had a big camera.
Right.
And early on, if you look at the early great states, I was sort of experimenting with what I was going to be. And so I made tried to make some comedy turns and, do some interesting stand-ups and whatnot. But photography really took over. I thought, okay, if it's a feature story, it's going to be a visual story to begin with. And less of me is better.
Right.
And so I turned toward photography, but in doing so, I disappeared. And so maybe a year or two would go by and you wouldn't see me. I was just a disembodied voice.
Right.
And I lost something there a little bit. And that was what that was the interplay between myself and my subject.
Yeah.
The sort of this relaxed, we're having a fun conversation.
Yeah.
Just, the interplay of question and answer, I lost a little bit of that. And so, and the action reaction, somebody would say something funny, and I'm responding. So I started to experiment around with little cameras, and I wanted something that had a wide angles to shoot back at me. And originally I mounted something like that on my camera physically to shoot back at me. And it was a little clunky, and the wide angle wasn't wide enough, even with an attached wide eye. And so it didn't look great. And so then I started using little video cameras and setting them off to the side. For a wide shot, you get matching video. And then GoPros came along and went, oh, that's perfect. You know, it's already a wide eye camera. You can set them somewhere, or you can set them on your camera and shoot back. So you can have a 2-camera shoot if you fix it in post. And now I have 3-4 GoPros, and I set them all over the place in wherever little theater area I'm shooting in, so that I have a wide shot I can cut to match video. And then there I am. I say, oh, this guy shoots his own stories. That's interesting. And there's a little bit of marketing to that too. Like, okay, he's a photographer and a reporter. Well, I appreciate that. He's not just a good-looking guy.
I was going to say pretty face, but same thing.
He's not just your weekend anchor man.
Yeah,
right. Trotting out in his suit and tie. When I know this guy's actually in there getting dirty and right with the subject, who's when the subject is showing the viewer the thing, he's showing me, and I'm right there, behind the camera. And I from a feature reporter's point of view, I think it's better. I think sometimes a third person is too much extra. And really the chief interplay is between the photographer and the subject, and the reporter's off taking notes somewhere, and maybe in the interview they get to know each other again. But really the real good interplay is right there. Especially if you have a camera within a foot, you're saying, show me that again, or you can whisper something to somebody and they'll give you a side eye, and it's it becomes very intimate, and I those kind of moments are what I think make good stories, when you can remove the technology and the person that you're shooting doesn't really recognize the camera anymore at all.
Right.
It's just you, and that's what I'm trying for.
Yeah, and I think you achieve it.
I'm trying. Yeah, it's difficult sometimes. If you got a kid who's 5 years old and the mom's in the room, you're not getting that.
Right.
You got to take him to your bedroom, or let's go outside by the trampoline, or let's go do something. Then you can show me your toys, and then we can have a conversation. But everybody's like that. We all have walls that we build up.
Sure.
And if I were to walk in and start fussing with lights, and then turn them on and sit you in a chair and start asking you really hard questions, and could you rephrase that? And that it just people stiffen up. And I've been a part of those shoots.
Yeah.
And I know the subject hates them. And they leave that interview chair saying, I'm never ever doing that again.
Right.
Never again am I going to subject myself to this kind of torture. And then there's me, who half the time you don't even know the camera's on. And it's in the back of the room. We're sitting in a chair, and I might have wrapped up the interview 10 minutes ago, but I didn't press the button. So we're still talking, and I'm still gathering good sound, good video, and capturing these nice little moments that make the technology disappear.
I have found that people are more genuine if they don't see the red light on the camera. They don't know it's being recorded.
And I try to talk to people on subjects with which they're familiar. That's why I'm there.
Yeah.
Are you whittling? Well, tell me how you do it.
Yeah.
Are you fishing? This is your wheelhouse. So, drop some knowledge on me, and they don't seem to mind. There's an understanding with a feature story, like, I'm coming for this. And they go, oh, great. I'm coming to watch I'm doing a story on your restaurant. It's terrific.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. And so it all falls into place pretty easily.
So 35 years of great state, couple of years before that, still at KFOR or Channel 4. 4 years before. So thinking about retiring?
Yeah, I guess I'm 63 at the moment of this interview.
Okay.
I can see myself completing 40 years of Great States.
Okay.
I would be 78 years old at 50 years of Great State. And that's
a long time.
that's not guaranteed. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. But I think I could make 67, 68. I could do that, but it's not in my hands. My wife, who I married in 1991 as well,
Okay.
she handles the money and the details, and when she says, "Hey, I think it's time," then I'm gonna go, wow, because I think when it comes to this kind of a run of feature stories or just a segment on the newscast that has a name, I'm so far out in front of everybody that I
Sure.
can't say that, oh, you owe me this kind of goodbye, or I'm owed this kind of respect that I would be able to call my own shots. I'm here on the whim of my employers,
Yeah.
and they could come to me this afternoon and say, let's not do this anymore. We're going to put you on overnights, and I would then say that it's been a really good run.
Yeah.
35 years is a pretty darn good
Yeah.
run, and I would be fine. I would probably quit, but
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
but I can't ask for more than I've received so far,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So Great State is certainly unique in this market anyway. Have other stations tried to duplicate what you've done? Have you done presentations at conferences about your approach and
There was a news director who's an old friend of mine who tried to duplicate Great State in New Bern, North Carolina, or maybe it was South Carolina.
Okay.
He had a thing called "Is this a Great State or what?" and it lasted a little bit, but I think the longevity is partly because I can do everything by myself.
Yeah.
I don't need to go and ask for help. I don't need to go and ask for a photographer to come with me. The series would die a quick death that way because we're chronically understaffed. Every time a big news event came up, they would pull my photographer because I'm a feature.
Yeah.
And so I very, very early on, I fought a couple of battles that I prevailed upon to not pull me, to be the sort of down the list unless something really, really big happened, not to pull me off this assignment. And it's been only a couple times, 95, 99, had to take a few weeks off to cover regular news, of course.
Right.
And I'm agreeable to do it. I just kind of said early on, don't pull me off a shoot because there's a car wreck. I can't
Right.
do that. You're not going to have a story regularly if you do that. And luckily, early on, I was able to win those battles and then go from there. So it's been a fantastic, and everybody else has respected that and respected me, and then they didn't know where I was, so they stopped asking.
There's a lot to be said for being out of sight and out of mind.
You get away with it as long as you deliver.
Exactly.
Your slot comes up, you have a story ready, and then they go, oh, well, who cares where he was?
Speaking of slot, is there a time length that you aim for?
Yeah, I would love to go as long as I wanted, but I have to fit within the confines of the 5 o'clock news.
Right.
And they're nice to me. They give me extra time. So I can push 2 minutes, a little over 2 minutes, but anything longer than 2 minutes and 10 seconds, 2:15, 2:20, if it's not a holiday, then they're going to, hey, we don't have time for the other stories. And
Right.
weather's complaining. In sports, we gave him 30 seconds tonight because your story. And so it overbalances the whole weight. The whole weight of
Right.
the newscast gets ponderous if you have one really long story. And at 5 o'clock especially, you can't, because you're getting out. You have a hard hard out. You know, the
Sure.
national news starts at 5:30 on the dot, and you better be there for the open. So I have been on other newscasts. The Great State has been on the 4:30, the 5, the 6, and 6:30 over the space of its 35 years. It's moved around to those different things. And when I was on at 6:30, I could go as long as I wanted. The producer just said, take whatever time you need. And I'd have a 3.5 minute package.
Nice.
You know, and he'd go, great, that's less work for me to do. And so there are really long ones. And then I've had it where people have come up to me and said, you know, the boss comes up and said, your stories are too long and we want them 135, no longer. And so I go, okay. And then they just creep up again. You know, if they're good, if it's good, then no one knows how long it is.
Right.
You go, wow, that was excellent. And then it's only an afterthought question, like, how long was that? Well, you know, it was as long as it needed to be.
Yeah. And Bob Dotson says similar about his In American Stories on NBC. And, you know, they started off really short and then expanded. And
well, when he was on the Today Show, he could go as long as he wanted, and those pieces were fantastic.
They were.
You know?
They were.
Really, really good. And so, you know, sometimes you can, it's nice to have another pair of eyes look at it and go, if I were going to cut this, I'd cut this soundbite in half and helps with the flow of the piece or keeps the pace up. And I always appreciate those kind of, those kind of things. But most of the time I'm just sneaking in just as much time as they'll possibly give me without saying that was a little long.
Galen Culver, thank you so much. This has been so delightful.
Hey, thanks for inviting me.
I've been wanting to hear more of your story for years, and now I have it even recorded. So that's wonderful.
While it's still going on.
Yes. This Town OKC is sponsored by Carpenter Square Theater, edited by Fred O. Bishop. I'm Rick Allen Lippert. This has been a Lippert Media production.